And for me, that started to come through within the last month of light language and or energetic language or an energetic transmission, however you want to term it. The label doesn't matter, is what it is. But just starting to speak it. And so what I realized in speaking it as I would walk, I started to speak the light language as I would walk. And the dialect I noticed is different between beings that are being spoken to. So if the wind is blowing and I choose to speak to the wind, where it's this real bellowy type tone that comes through as I'm speaking to the wind, there's a difference. If it's the trees, then the dialect is different in what comes through for the trees. That's because the frequency, there's a difference in frequency. The frequency that's held within the trees, there's a difference. If I'm speaking some galactic, receiving galactic energy, for instance, or angelic energy, for instance, it's all different. It all plays in a different way. That's because the frequency of vibration between the entities or the beings is just different. It just is what it is. But that's how that started to come about. And now I can just get in the heart and just open myself and it just comes. Yeah.
Okay, let's hear about dragons.
Well, it's the same. It's the same. So I haven't been one who's asked for sources, but I've known that I carry that as an energy as well. And what it yields to me. I've always been sensitive, and growing up, I was exceedingly shy. I mean, really shy, right? And I hated, I will say hated, because I really hated it, being in front of crowds and speaking in front of crowds. But the dragon energy is with me because, okay, you know, guides come to help you in various areas that you need assistance in. And that's one of the areas that I obviously needed assistance in, is that confidence, that assertiveness, that ability to stand my ground, stand in my power, and be able to deliver a message with clarity and confidence. And that's what that dragon energy yields to me. And when I channel the language of light from the dragon energy, it's a very stern, assertive, confident type of delivery. There is a difference, but there are guides in many forms that we all have with us. Our team is not comprised of all those who have just been human. There is more to this creation than just us. And what exists on this planet, we have many beings who have held many different forms accompanying us, and they are able to help us in many different ways and bring to us what we need in the moment as the creators who exist on the leading edge of creation. Yeah.
I am so intrigued. I'm so intrigued. You are so in your body and so in tune. What does it feel like when you are channeling the dragon energy?
So I was thinking about this the other day and how to articulate it, because it's not something that you can easily articulate it. And I'll tell you this, I came across a video of Esther Hicks, Abraham speaking through Esther Hicks. And I remember hearing these words a long time ago, and I didn't really get it to the level that I get it now. But when you are tapped into source, Abraham says, it's like liquid love. It's like a feeling of ecstatic bliss that's being channeled through you. You are completely open, and the only thing that you can even compare it to in our human mind would be sex, right? The feeling of that, like when it's coming through, when you are completely open and in flow, it is just a state of sustained ecstatic bliss. Is that it's the way that I can describe it. So when Jeff Tolley was on a few weeks ago, and he spoke about how that feeling of the movement of energy is almost orgasmic, that was not an overstatement of the feeling the energy move, because it is almost to that. It is to that degree. I'm not going to even sugarcoat it. It is. The movement is that, but it is a sustained feeling of that, a sustained state of feeling, of feeling that. Yeah.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
I have to share my experience with the dragon. Okay. And it's so, and Angela, you kind of, you set the stage for this experience. And before you even started sharing the feeling of bliss and everything, I'm like, oh, I got to tell about my dragon experience. So it's an out of body experience. And there's a dragon. I'm looking up and there's a dragon above me, and just the most beautiful dragon I can imagine, light green, beautiful, beautiful dragon. And I felt him come closer to me, because I asked him to come closer so I could be with him, and we merged, and it was the most ecstatic, just like what you were describing, feeling, orgasmic bliss. And this was merging with this dragon. Yeah, it was beautiful.
Hashtag not jealous. Preston, tell us more about dragons.
Yeah, everyone loves dragons. It's so popular in our culture, and I find that fascinating. My introduction was, of course, The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. And I looked upon dragons as, fantasy creatures. And it's a major trope in fantasy fiction. And of course, watched Game of Thrones, which is all about dragons. But then, of course, I started finding out that there is a real element to this in our culture, and that possibly dragons did actually exist, are true creatures. And that fascinated me. I'm like, wow, dragons are real? What? And then I'm so glad, Sharon, you talked about your own dragon experience, because I don't talk about this much, but I had an out-of-body experience that was so wild. I popped out of body and I'm wandering around, what am I going to do? Walking through the house, popped out into the backyard, and I looked up and I saw this glowing cloud coming towards me. I'm like, oh, it's a UFO. It's going to come out of this cloud. And it got closer and closer, and then it drops out of the sky, and it wasn't a UFO. It was a dragon. And I couldn't tell you how shocked I was, because when you're out of body, this is more real than a dream. This is more, it's just like being awake. I mean, you are awake. And to have a dragon drop down into my tiny little postage stamp of a backyard was shocking. And it was a beautiful emerald green dragon, iridescent scales.
Iridescent, yeah.
Oh,
that's what I've seen. Yeah.
Most gorgeous thing I've ever seen. And it came right towards me and looked at me, and yes, very stern. It wasn't like a little puppy dog at all. This was a creature of incredible age and wisdom, and brought its head down towards me real close, and being in the presence of that is indescribable. And I put my hand up and touched its head, and we connected, and it did the most wonderful thing. It put its leg up for me to climb onto its back, and I rode off with it and up into the sky. And it's just the most incredible experience I've ever had in my life. I rode a dragon. It's so crazy. And this is why I don't talk about it, because people think you're nuts. You've been watching too much Game of Thrones. I'm like, well, it's an out-of-body experience. It is what it is. But I loved it, and I will never forget it. And I totally get what you're talking about when you talk about dragons. Wow, so much fun.
Wow, that was sacred, Preston. I feel like you just blessed us with this sacred, holy moment that gives us permission to dream. It gives me permission to dream. I'll speak to that, where it's like,